I'm back here. Well, actually I'm not, this is a completely different place, but some of you may remember that about a year ago I made a film about the infrastructure bill, which became an Act of Parliament and law. And it was to do with removing landowners or house owners' rights to have a say in whether the land that they own underneath their surface land is fracked. So the Infrastructure Act had a lot of different sections. One of it was to do with onshore unconventional oil and gas. That bill became an act, it became law, because a number of MPs were under the mistaken impression that there was a watertight ban on fracking in certain areas. National parks, SSIs, sites of special scientific interest. I think the Norfolk Broads were mentioned in there. There was headlines, fracking banned in national parks. Amber Rudd, I think, said, we've agreed an outright ban in national parks and other protected areas. So the Labour MPs who were wavering about voted, and it went into law. So then there are some little details to tie up later. The devil's in the detail. Yesterday, we're now in October 2015. House of Commons, second delegated legislation committee. It's got 18 members. It's weighted the same way as the House of Commons is, so the majority by a small amount were Tory. Only those 18 MPs that are on the delegated committee can vote, and they are meeting to discuss draft onshore hydraulic fracturing protected area regulations. So I was there as an observer. I saw about 25 other people, and there were other MPs there, for example Caroline Lucas, Dennis Skinner, Nick Herbert. There were people who are beyond these 18, but only these 18 MPs can vote. They did vote and they passed this through, but what was extraordinary in the process was the way, the devious way, became apparent of how the government made it look one way, to do with protecting national parks, but actually, no, this legislation has got nothing to do with the surface activity in the national parks. This is to do with the hydraulic fracturing, which is done deep down. Turning briefly to, this is what she said, turning briefly to surface level protections, our existing planning regime already offers strong protections to sensitive areas. Wanting you to think, oh well then, let's not bother with anything else. So, but in addition, the government is separately committed to ensure that hydraulic fracturing cannot be conducted from wells that are drilled at the surface of national parks. Well, that sounds good, and other protected areas. Members can be reassured that this remains the government's position. We are currently considering how to best implement this surface restriction. However, the regulations before you today is not suitable because the Infrastructure Act requires us to specify the protected areas within which subsurface hydraulic fracturing cannot take place. Consideration of surface activity is therefore not within the scope of these regulations. You almost have to stop listening because you can tell there's some spiel in there that you sort of don't want to hear. It's actually very difficult to listen sometimes. I transcribed that this morning. Basically, the industry have known this for a long time, and they take us for fools. And in many ways, we are. We're certainly fools when it comes to the government because they cannot be trusted. They've shown that on so many occasions. And yet somehow this thing of, I believe what we say, we're still sort of suckered into it. You know, if Amber Rudd says, prior to the Infrastructure Act becoming an act of law, we've agreed an outright ban in national parks, you sort of think they've agreed to an outright ban in national parks. You don't expect the new energy minister to come along in October 15 and say, we're talking about hydraulic fracturing, not what happens at the surface. You know, that's the old industry trick. The process, to be very technical or very precise, hydraulic fracturing, I mean, you don't frack the grass or trees, do you? So we did all know that hydraulic fracturing, the actual process of fracturing the shale rock, obviously doesn't happen at the surface, because that's where grass and trees and people and animals are. So they use that argument to basically say, well, we're not talking about the surface here, we're just talking about under the ground. We'll get to it very soon. She goes on to say, we will consider it very soon. Why not yesterday? Because that was about the protected areas. Why separate the two? Where's the benefit in that? It's just a con. It's just a con. There are stages of this con.